Welcome to the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery.
Welcome to another deep dive, and this time we're tackling something I think we all struggle with, that inner advice monster we all have.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because we're not trying to turn anyone into like a certified coach or anything.
Right.
It's more about weaving those coach-like skills into how you already lead and interact with people, every single day.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about making a difference right where you are.
Yeah, and the source material we are using is Bungay Stanier's The Advice Trap.
Yeah.
We're going to try and figure out why we are so quick to offer advice, even when it backfires.
Yeah.
And how we can become more like coach-like leaders in our everyday lives.
The book really forces us to confront why we get stuck in that advice trap in the first place.
Right.
Like it challenges those deeply ingrained assumptions about what it means to be helpful, to be effective as a leader.
It's like we're programmed to just jump in with solutions.
Yeah.
I know I've been there so many times.
All the time.
Bungay Stanier talks about these three personas that our advice monster just loves to wear. I'm sure you've heard of these. The tell it, the save it, and the control it. And if you think about a time when you just felt that urge to jump in and offer a solution, think about which one of those personas you were channeling in that moment.
Yeah. Each of those personas comes from this underlying belief that we're somehow better than the person we're advising.
Right.
The tell it thinks they have all the answers. The save it feels responsible for fixing everything.
Oh, I'm a save it for sure.
And the control, it just needs to be the one calling all the shots.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into those traps without even realizing it.
Absolutely.
The urge to rescue someone can be really strong.
Totally.
But what's the cost of giving into that urge? What happens then?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, because the book doesn't shy away from outlining what happens when we constantly give advice. Like, it can create over-reliance on leaders and actually stifle creativity and innovation in the people we're trying to help.
So we're almost hindering their growth instead of nurturing it in a way.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
We think we're being helpful, but we're actually making them dependent on us for all the answers.
Wow.
And you can imagine how that can play out in an organization.
Yeah, absolutely.
If everyone's looking to their leaders for all the answers, it just reinforces that top-down hierarchy and slows down progress.
Makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it limits real change because people aren't empowered to find their own solutions.
Bungay Stanier also talks about this idea of easy change versus hard change and how those relate to our present self and our future self.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is how he links those concepts to our sense of identity.
Yeah.
Like easy change, that's all about quick fixes for our present selves.
Right.
Like going for those small wins that feel good in the moment.
Okay.
But hard change, that's about building our future selves, who we want to become. It often means saying no to that instant gratification and embracing the challenge that leads to long-term growth.
Yeah, it's like those two selves are constantly battling it out.
They are.
Our present self wants the easy way out.
Yeah.
And often gets caught up in the Cartman drama triangle, those classic roles of victim, rescuer, and persecutor.
Oh, totally.
Have you ever felt trapped in one of those roles?
Oh, absolutely.
Me too.
And those roles, they just feed the advice trap because they offer those short-term rewards, those wins that feel good in the moment,
Right.
but don't really serve us or the other person in the long run.
Yeah, he calls them wins, not wins.
Exactly. They might make us feel good temporarily, but ultimately they prevent real growth.
So how do we escape this trap?
Well, the key is to tame that inner advice monster.
Okay.
And luckily, Bungay Stanier lays out this really powerful 4-step process for doing just that.
Okay, let's walk through those steps because these are things people listening can actually start doing today to break free from the advice trap.
Yeah.
Step 1 is to identify your triggers. Right.
What are the people or the situations that activate your advice monster?
Yeah, the book actually has some great examples and prompts that can help you figure that out.
Good.
Like, is there a particular team member who always seems to push your buttons?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's high-pressure meetings that bring out your inner tell it.
Makes sense.
Right. Think about the patterns in your own life.
Once you know what sets you off,
Yeah.
Step 2 is about owning up to your behaviors.
Right.
What do you actually do when your advice monster takes over?
Yeah, and that can be a little uncomfortable, but it's a crucial step.
Yeah, it is.
So think about those specific actions you take when your advice monster is in the driver's seat.
Okay.
Do you interrupt? Do you offer unsolicited solutions? Do you take on other people's responsibilities?
Mm-hmm.
All of those things are ways that you're preventing them from truly owning their challenges.
Yeah, and we don't even realize we're doing it half the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And that awareness is crucial for moving to step 3, understanding the prizes and punishments tied to those behaviors.
Okay. We've already touched on those wins, not wins, but now it's about articulating the short-term benefits, the prizes of giving advice.
So like feeling valuable.
For you.
Or being seen as the expert.
Exactly.
Or even just a sense of control.
Exactly. But then you also need to be honest about the long-term downsides, the punishments, for both you and the other person.
Right.
What are the real costs of constantly jumping in with solutions?
Like, it might make you feel helpful in the moment,
Yeah.
but in the long run, it could stifle the other person's creativity
Totally.
and prevent them from developing their own problem-solving skills.
Exactly, yeah. And that brings us to step 4, running litmus tests. This is where you design little experiments to challenge those fears and assumptions about not immediately jumping in with advice.
Give us an example of a litmus test.
Yeah, so let's say your fear is that if you don't offer a solution, the problem won't get solved.
Okay.
Right. A litmus test could be intentionally waiting before offering your idea and just observing what happens. Right. Does the other person come up with a solution on their own?
Yeah.
Do they seek out other resources?
Yay.
Do they even need your advice at all?
I like that.
Remember, you're testing your assumptions, not the other person.
Right.
It's about intentionally stepping outside of that comfort zone and seeing what happens when you resist that urge to give advice.
Yes. And by running these tests, you might be surprised to discover that things don't fall apart when you're not the one providing all the answers.
Right.
In fact, it often leads to more creative and sustainable solutions because you're tapping into the collective wisdom and potential of the team.
Right. And you're allowing people to grow.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like we're shifting from being the problem solver to being the possibility creator.
Yeah, it's not just about fixing things, right?
Right.
You're actually creating an environment where people can step up, where they can discover their own solutions.
I like that.
And that's where the real magic happens, both for individuals and for the organization as a whole.
And the best part is, coaching is actually pretty simple.
Yeah.
The core idea is to stay curious longer and resist that urge to just jump in with advice.
Bungay Stanier calls it a superpower,
Yeah,
the power of curiosity.
that's good.
And he actually draws on his earlier book, The Coaching Habit, to give us some really practical tools for putting that superpower into action.
Oh, okay. So we've got the advice trap, laying out the problem.
Yeah,
And then the coaching habit gives us some solutions.
exactly.
Okay.
The Coaching Habit provides these 7 essential questions that can guide a coaching conversation.
Okay.
But remember, it's not just about asking the questions.
Right.
It's about the process of inquiry.
So it's not about finding the right answer.
No.
It's about asking the right questions
Yes.
to unlock their potential.
Exactly.
So it's like we're holding up a mirror instead of painting a picture for them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he emphasizes keeping things simple, elegant,
Yeah.
not about complicated frameworks or anything like that.
So now how do we make this into a habit? All right, so how do we actually do this? Bungay Stanier gives us 3 key strategies for mastering the coaching habit.
Okay.
And the first is to prime for success.
Okay.
This is about intentionally activating that coaching mindset.
How do we do that?
Well, it could be as simple as, a sticky note on your desk with the word curious on it.
Oh, okay.
Right? Or visualizing yourself asking open-ended questions before a meeting.
Yeah.
It's really about finding what works for you, right?
Okay.
Those little triggers that remind you to approach the conversation with that coaching mindset.
I like that.
So it's like giving yourself a little nudge.
Yeah, those little things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super.
What's the second one? Okay, the second strategy is to seal the exits.
Seal the exits.
This is all about using something called Terra tactics
What's up?
to keep people engaged in the conversation.
Okay.
So Terra stands for tribe, expectation, rank, and autonomy.
Okay.
These are actually like fundamental drivers that influence how our brains respond in social situations.
Wow.
And they play a huge role in how receptive someone is to coaching.
Okay. So let's break that down.
Okay, yeah.
What's tribe?
So tribe is all about creating that sense of belonging, right? So using inclusive language,
Okay.
really listening to understand their perspective, finding that common ground.
Right.
Because you want to signal that you're on the same team working together towards a shared goal.
Yeah, because when you feel like you're part of the group, then
Yeah.
you feel more comfortable
Absolutely.
sharing ideas.
Yeah, and being receptive to feedback.
Right.
And then the second driver, expectation, is about being really upfront about the purpose of the conversation.
Oh.
Right. Letting them know that you're going to be asking them questions. You're going to be helping them discover their own solutions rather than just handing them the answers.
So setting those expectations up front.
Oh, exactly.
Especially if it's different from how they've been interacting with you in the past.
Exactly, yeah. And setting those clear expectations helps create a much safer space for the conversation.
Makes sense.
So then rank, how do we handle the power dynamics in a way that keeps people engaged?
That's a good one.
Well, Bungay Stanier actually has a great mantra for this.
Okay.
Lower your rank and lift them up.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. It's about finding ways to make the other person feel valued, respected.
Because if someone feels like they're beneath you, they're not going to want to share.
Exactly.
You're not going to want to speak their mind.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's about sharing answers instead of hoarding them.
Okay.
Adjusting your body language.
Right.
You know, maybe even acknowledging your own fallibility.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Show them that you see them as an equal partner in the conversation, not a subordinate.
Yeah, and being vulnerable enough to admit that you don't have all the answers.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It takes courage.
But it creates that connection.
Absolutely.
And the last one is autonomy.
Yeah, so autonomy is all about giving them the choice.
That's
right. Offering options, inviting their input, empowering them to make their own decisions.
Right, so you're the guide, not the dictator.
Exactly. And by doing that, you're actually fostering their sense of ownership and accountability. And you're also creating a more sustainable solution that truly aligns with their needs and perspective.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Those Terra tactics.
Yeah.
I like that.
Those are simple but powerful tweaks we can make to our communication.
And what was the third one?
Okay, so the third strategy is seek saturation.
What does that mean?
It's about going beyond those, formal coaching sessions
Okay.
and integrating these skills into every interaction across all channels.
So we're talking about every conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just formal one-on-ones.
Meetings, feedback conversations, even emails.
Right, like making it a natural part of the way you interact with people.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because if you're only practicing these skills in those formal settings, you're missing out on countless opportunities to really develop that coaching habit.
Makes sense. So it's like we're weaving these coaching threads into like the fabric of our leadership style.
Yeah, and the more you do it, the more natural it becomes.
Right.
It's not just about like mastering the specific techniques.
Yeah.
It's really about embodying that mindset of curiosity and empowerment.
Which brings us to Bungay Stanier's final challenge, moving away from old fears. And this is where we really step into that future you that we talked about.
Yeah, this is a good question. What are we so afraid of when it comes to letting go of that advice-giving habit?
I think a lot of it comes down to control, right?
Yeah.
We're afraid that if we don't provide the answers, things will fall apart. Or maybe we're worried about being seen as incompetent or unhelpful if we don't have a solution ready to go.
Yeah, those are very real fears. And the book really encourages us to face them head on.
Okay.
Remember those litmus tests we talked about? Those are a fantastic way to challenge those fears and see what happens when we resist that urge to jump in with advice.
So we're testing out those assumptions in a safe environment.
And, the results can be pretty amazing.
Okay.
You might find that the people you're trying to help are way more capable and resourceful than you thought.
Right?
They might come up with solutions you never even considered.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're shifting from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance.
Exactly.
Believing that everyone has something to contribute.
Absolutely. And that shift in perspective is so important for building a truly empowering and innovative culture.
Okay, so we've explored the problem, the solutions, and now we're moving beyond the advice trap. Does Bungay Stanier give us any other advice for how to fully embody this coach-like approach?
He encourages us to cultivate 3 key qualities.
Okay.
Generosity, vulnerability, and a student mentality.
Those sound like pretty good antidotes to the advice-giving habit.
Yeah, they really are. So generosity is about creating a safe space for growth through genuine appreciation and acknowledgement.
Okay.
It's about recognizing someone's efforts, celebrating their wins, even acknowledging their struggles.
Yeah, because when someone feels seen and valued, they're more likely to take risks
Absolutely.
and ultimately grow.
Exactly.
Like this.
And then vulnerability, that's about being open to being coached, ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's about actively seeking feedback, acknowledging our own blind spots, and being willing to learn and grow.
It takes courage to admit you don't have all the answers.
It does.
But that vulnerability is what creates real connection
Mm-hmm.
and fosters a culture of learning.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the last one was a student mentality.
Yeah, so it's about approaching, leadership and coaching with this mindset of continuous learning and growth.
Yeah.
Always be on the lookout for new ideas and perspectives.
Yeah, we should never stop learning.
Never.
So it sounds like becoming a coach-like leader is a journey.
It is, absolutely.
There's always something new to discover.
Yeah, and perhaps the most surprising insight from the book is that there are times when giving advice is actually appropriate.
Oh, okay.
But even then, there's an art to it.
So we're not throwing advice out the window?
No, not at all.
We're just trying to be more mindful about it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Bungay Stanier suggests 2 key strategies: diminishing and delivering.
Okay.
So diminishing is about softening the delivery of your advice,
Mm-hmm.
presenting it as just one option among many rather than the be-all and end-all solution.
So instead of saying, here's what you should do,
Yeah,
maybe you say, have you considered this?
Exactly.
Or here's an idea you might want to explore.
exactly. It takes the pressure off the other person, right?
Right.
And it creates more space for them to consider different options.
Okay. And delivering.
Delivering is about, giving advice boldly and concisely when it's truly needed.
Mm-hmm.
You're not being wishy-washy, but you're also not over-explaining or dictating.
Right.
It's about finding that balance where you're providing clear guidance without stifling the other person's autonomy.
So it sounds like it's not about choosing to be a coach-like leader or an advice giver.
No.
It's about mastering both approaches
Yeah.
and knowing when to use each one.
And the advice trap really gives us a powerful framework for doing just that. It's about shifting from being a problem solver to a possibility creator.
I like that.
It's about taming that inner advice monster and really embracing that transformative power of staying curious longer.
I love how Bungay Stanier leaves us with that question. What would be possible if we fully embrace the challenge of staying curious longer? What doors could we open for ourselves, our teams, our organizations? Imagine the possibilities if we truly tapped into that collective wisdom and potential all around us.
It's definitely a question worth pondering and a journey worth taking.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to take up that challenge. Tame your advice monster. Embrace the power of curiosity.
The world needs more coach-like leaders. And it all starts with asking a question instead of offering a solution.
And for those of you who want to dive deeper into these ideas, we've included a link to Michael Bungay Stanier's website and box of crayons in the show notes.
Yeah, you'll find a ton of resources there, including his list of 52 recommended teachers and books to further your understanding of coaching and leadership.
Great. Well, until next time, stay curious and keep asking those powerful questions.
Absolutely.
See you on the next deep dive.
See you next time on the Facilitators Deep Dive Podcast, your podcast on your way to facilitation mastery. Until next time.
See you then.